Objection! Hold it! Take that! Those words are the staple of the Phoenix Wright series, and today we'll be looking at the one that started things all off, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, or Gyakuten Saiban if you prefer the Japanese name. The Phoenix Wright series was brought to life by Capcom employee Shu Takumi, the man who brought us games like Dino Crisis and its sequel Dino Crisis 2. Takumi worked with a team of 7 people over 10 months to make the original Game Boy Advance version of the game, and he wanted to make a simple game that even his mother could play. While there are localization differences between the Japanese and Western versions of the game, for the sake of this review as well as the other games in the series going forward, I'll be using the name of characters and locations from the Western release. This review is also the first part of a series of Phoenix Wright reviews where I'll include a little bit more information on the series as well. Set in the year 2016 in Los Angeles, you play the role of Phoenix Wright, a rookie defense attorney ready to take on his first case with his mentor and chief Mia Fey, a renowned defense attorney herself. The case in question is to defend Phoenix's friend Larry Bunce, who is being accused of murdering his girlfriend Cindy Stone. After learning the basics of checking the evidence in the court records, the game will run through its system of listening to witnesses testify and pointing out contradictions while Phoenix is cross-examining them. The first case acts as a tutorial of sorts for the player to get their head around what goes down in court, and the second case, where Phoenix has to defend Mia's sister Maya and meets his rival Miles Edgeworth, is where the true adventure begins. Phoenix will be examining locations of interest and gathering evidence for him to use in court. The game originally featured 4 cases, but with the release of it on the DS, a 5th case was added which was designed to tie up events of the first and second games a little better. But is the game any good? Find out in The Good. Each case's plot I felt was structured well and essentially made the game. As you go around investigating scenes of interest and finding evidence as well as producing it in court, you start to unravel parts of the case which could potentially turn things around. Hence the titles having turnabout in them, with the exception being the 5th case, Rise from the Ashes. It's something that you'll see in all of the games, and one of the main things that keeps me coming back to it. Some of the questions presented require some thinking outside the box, and the cases of this game, with the exception of the first case, all tend to point to a common theme and ultimately tie in with one another, with Rise from the Ashes acting as a good bridge between the first and second game, as well as introducing some new features that would ultimately appear in the 4th game, Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney onwards. The game features a unique cast of characters, each with their own personality quirks, and it's always interesting to read Phoenix's thoughts on the things they say and do. I also like the random banter between the characters when you investigate certain things, and it's that random banter in the game which started the running gag that is the ladder vs stepladder debate. Later on in the game you'll find that the legal system makes it so that trials will only last a maximum of 3 days, which I think is a good length for a case to play out. The court system implemented in the game is certainly something I really enjoyed. In court, Phoenix will be mainly listening to witness testimonies and then poking holes in said testimony when he cross-examines them. If you feel that a witness is being vague about details or feel you could get more information out of them, you can press the witness in the attempt to find out more. Whenever you're stuck cross-examining a witness, it always pays to press their statements to bring up a contradiction that you can then present evidence to. Once you have the witness on the ropes, you can then push your point further while backing it up with the appropriate evidence in order for the witness to either confess or reveal another twist in the case. The game even has a gimmick where you can hold a button and say "Hold it," "Objection," or "Take that" into the 3DS microphone. This was a request from Capcom staff in the US for the DS version, and while the Japanese staff weren't particularly keen on adding the feature, they decided to anyway to make the Western audience happy, and I think it worked out well. Of course, another thing that makes the game, and in my opinion the series, memorable is its music and sound effects. The music sets up the mood and scenes very well, and certainly does a great job of presenting it to the player as shown by these examples.
Objection!
The sound effects as shown in the music examples also help set the mood of the situation, such as whether a character is surprised, right down to having a mental breakdown. There's even been some attention to detail with male characters having a lower tone to represent them while they're speaking, and female characters having a higher tone. As simple as it is, I found it effective and it's certainly a key part of the game. With that though, there's more to a game than the good, so let's move on to the bad. To be absolutely honest here, I don't really have many bad things to say about this entry. One of the key annoyances I had with the DS version was fixed for the trilogy release, and that was skipping text. In the DS version, if you hadn't completed the case before or you're playing it for the first time, you can't skip text at all. Even if you know what the characters are trying to say, you had to wait for the text to finish before moving on to the next bit of text. Thankfully, this was removed in the 3DS version. The only gripe I had with the game was with a certain part from Rise from the Ashes, where you needed to rotate a piece of evidence to resemble something else, with the game being incredibly picky and finicky about how I angled it. I found that when it comes down to whether you prefer the graphics from the original GBA/DS version of the game against the upscaled graphics, it was all up to personal preference. I easily prefer the GBA/DS graphics over the iOS version, but I think the 3DS version, given its screen resolution, handles the upscaled graphics adequately. Other than that, there isn't much else for me to talk about here, so let's move on to the opinion. I'm quite fond of the Phoenix Wright games personally. The first entry in the game has some very memorable moments and also contains one of my favourite cases in the entire series. The story was really good, and this was backed up well by its gameplay and use of sound and music. There wasn't much for me to fault the game on, as gripes I did have with the original game were mostly fixed by the time of the 3DS revision. If you're fond of mysteries and you don't mind the visual novel presentation of the game, then I'd say definitely pick the game up. The Phoenix Wright series and its spin-offs are well worth investing time and money into. So with that, it's time for my rating. Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney gets a ladder. Or is that a step ladder? Out of 10. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next Infinite Backlog review. If you enjoyed today's review, feel free to check out some of our other videos and subscribe for more. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram and our Facebook page. Once again, thank you for watching.